Alright, so, Sylvio 2. This is a game I really wanted to enjoy, and the game is not bad, strictly speaking. The game is competent at best in quite a few areas, but, and this is pretty much the crux of the review here, this is just not as good of a game as the original Sylvio. That's pretty much all I can bring to the non-spoiler part of this review, because the minute I get into any further than this, I suppose I can talk about the gameplay a little bit more, but really the long and the short of it is, if you enjoyed Sylvio for the puzzle solving, the exploration, the treasure hunting, and even the combat, if it maybe wasn't your bag entirely, but you still found it somewhat entertaining, the original Sylvio has all of that and does it very well and balances it very nicely with this atmospheric sense of horror. Sylvio 2 sort of ditches all of that, and if you feel that maybe that won't give you such a great experience, watch the Let's Play of it, watch someone else's Let's Play of it. As much as I want to support developers when they make games, when they try new stuff, this legitimately felt like a massive step backwards from the guys at Stroboscope, and it's such a shame because the original Sylvio was so good, and they'd hit this nail on the head that no one else had even seen that particular nail, and they just went, haha, boom, one hit, done. And then this came out, and it's been a general disappointment. So yeah, in a nutshell, under 2 minutes. If you really feel like you must, then go on, because it's not that expensive, but in all honesty, if you enjoyed the first Sylvio, you probably won't enjoy this one. Right, so, that's the spoiler-free part of the review done. So, Sylvio 2, the game that shat the bed in the last 30 seconds, what can I say? This is pretty much my big issue with certain writers, I don't know, there's a certain mentality I feel where a twist at the end of a bit of narrative, if it's done well, and it's either a, okay, that makes all of this make sense in context, is okay, or a, wow, oh my god, I thought it was going to be this, or this, and it turned out to be this, which was something which also logically makes sense, but wasn't something that I imagined would be the case. Those are kind of twists that work. Those are twists that understand that the audience is probably trying to guess along, but are smart enough to actually try and play against that or play that up, or even just like a satisfying kind of cathartic twist. I mean, that's always there as well. Like if you suddenly go, you thought it was hopeless, no, you can still get your good ending. That'd still be quite nice. Sylvio 2 just has aliens. Just takes one game full of very heavy Native American folklore and seances and all this sense of spiritualism, and this very Lovecraftian sense of like madness and stuff inside the blood and hallucinations, and then at least a second game which kind of does this, I don't know, selection of vignettes of people doing strange, cult-like, psychotic stuff, and then goes, oh, by the way, it was all aliens, everyone else on the planet Earth is dead, we sealed the whole thing up because this weird ghost monster came out, which, by the way, was your fault. We're going to take you across the galaxy to where the last remnants of humanity are. Bye! You can see why a lot of people have not exactly reviewed this reviewed this game favourably, because that is a arse pull if I have ever seen one. That is someone who went, well, I mean, they'll probably guess all the other things I was thinking of, so you know what, fuck them, here's some aliens, here's a fucking flying saucer that would make Ed Wood blush, and we can just kind of bail out of the story at that point. And it's legitimately insulting. It insults the intelligence and like the enjoyment of the people who have been playing that game, and you get to that bit and you go, I mean, yeah, there have been some great twists that shift genres. From Dusk Till Dawn's brilliant because it begins as a gangster movie, and if you've never seen the movie ahead of time, spoilers, I apologise, but it turns into a fucking vampire slaughterathon, like about halfway, maybe like a third of the way into the movie, and just doesn't let off the gas. That's an amazing genre shift. Admittedly, it's a Robert Rodriguez film, there's not much you can really do but expect there to be some kind of tone shift which ends up with loads of people dying, but anyway. Yeah, it wasn't well done, and I normally don't bang on about the narrative right at the beginning, but it is the biggest fucking problem here. It is such a complete fucking letdown, and again, like, if the second game, if Sylvio 2 had not well, I mean, if it had started to lay some seeds early on, or maybe just make some illusions early on, maybe I could have bought it. Maybe I could have sort of gone, okay. But all the game really delivered was some janky, unrelated, like, slice of life American Horror Story-esque, just, oh, here's a room, and it's different wallpaper, and there's people going crazy, and whoa, and like, okay, that's fine. Why am I in the hotel for The Shining? Now why am I in Salem's Lot? And now I'm here. Just nothing was really making that much sense. I was pretty much just walking from room to room trying to find out what would make the plot go forward. And that's not a good position for the player to be in. That's something a playtester should go, by the way, I don't give a fuck about anything that's happening. I know it all works, but I just don't give a shit. And yeah, like, that's something I would have hoped they'd have caught early on and gone, this is a very tangentially sort of, okay, but thou must go to this next island and this island. And yes, there is the drive for Juliet to try and find Lighthouse Island. But for one, she doesn't seem to be, like, in the first game, one of the really nice things about the first game was that Juliet Walters, the woman you play as, is wanting to explore the park. He's wanting to explore Saginaw Park because there was this big mudslide, used to be an ancient Indian burial ground, there was a big disaster, this whole abandoned theme park, and she's just a young woman, exploring this theme park, talking to ghosts because she thinks it's interesting, because she just wants to know more. There's no, oh, I've got to go and save my sister, or blah, blah, blah. There's no push for you to do it, but at the same time you kind of get into the rhythm of the game, and then it goes, but there's cool stuff to explore, and you want to find out more, and there's all these things, and you've got so many tools to explore the world with. It makes the player want to explore, and that's so tricky to do for a sandbox game. I mean, technically it's not sandbox, it is fairly linear, but it does these big open environments that does reward treasure hunting. Sorry, I'm banging on about Sylvio again. Sorry. But the problem is that all gets removed with Sylvio too. You go from that to a big open kind of Silent Hill-esque lake where you've got these large amorphous licorice turds that you just pilot your boat to one by one, dip into them, walk through a bunch of audio triggers. I mean, even small things like that, like I went, the fact that I just kind of mash my face at things now, not quite so entertaining, but yeah, you just get all these clues, you get all these audio cues, you pick up, apparently, these somewhat useful things, these big metal lumps. I have looked around, I cannot find a fucking explanation as to what they were. Like, is there a secret ending? I don't think there is. I've looked around. I genuinely, when I finished the game, I then went and just Googled the ending and went, no, is there another version? Did I get the joke ending or something? Did I accidentally stumble arse first into like the joke ending? No, that's the actual ending. So, but yes, the problem is that the game mechanics that were so good at helping the player move forward in the first game have been so heavily cut down in the second game. You get although you are obviously moving forward with the plot and you are in each little mini instance, you're unraveling what's happened there, you get no sense of interacting with the world. There's no using the actual microphone to find the little motes of light in order to actually get the thing. You still have the audio mixing, and I will go back to that in a second, because I think that was probably the one thing that the game did really nicely. But the lack of combat especially, I found, I know not a lot of people liked it, and a lot of the game is in this very close, very kind of tight-knit sort of area, so that wouldn't have really lent itself too well to the kind of open area combat the first game did. But it just left me feeling like, well, it left me feeling fairly helpless. I don't know about anyone else. If anyone else has ever played Sylvio, I don't know if you'll have this experience as well, but just having the potato gun out rather than just the flashlight made me feel tremendously more safe, and I love that in an atmospheric horror game. The fact that it gave you the option to have this little security blanket of this utterly ineffective potato gun just to be like, ugh. But yeah, it's a shame really, because just I don't know what led these guys to take so much out of the game. If it was time, if it was design, if it was, I don't know, unfavourable feedback from people who played the game before, and the guys went, okay, we'll take that out because clearly people didn't like it. But they just cut out too much. It's taken off the arm when you really should have just trimmed a fingernail. But anyway. So the one thing that I think the game did quite nicely was the inclusion of, well, I mean, going back to the audio mixing and the audio separation of the EVP recordings. I always think that's a really nice idea. I've always loved it when games do a lot of investigation. One of the games I desperately want to Let's Play, but I can't because I don't have the console and I don't have a capture card, is Condemned 2, which is an Xbox exclusive, which is such a pile of dog shit. But because it actually included a lot of really neat CSI crime scene investigation and like analysing data and making up a chain of incidents and so much stuff like that. And I found that Sylvio is the only other game that's really allowed me to kind of scratch that particular itch. There is actually another game that's I've just seen on Steam, which I might do in the future, but anyway. And I really like just the fact that you do get into it and you are rewinding, cutting, looking back at it, trying to work out specifically where the little cuts are. And at a certain point in the game, spoilers again, although we're into the spoilery part of the game anyway, part of the review anyway, the best instance of that has to be the fucking summoning part where you just go into someone's house and this little girl summons a demon and the whole house starts going crazy, and when you start doing the voice recordings to try and undo it, there is that face from the first game, from the photo frames, staring at you through the audio recording. It's not moving, it's just there, and it's the only time it happens, and I will tell you now, I still have glimpses of that in my fucking sleep. That is some effective fucking horror right there. So yeah, I can't necessarily give the game too much shit because it still manages to pull that off really nicely. Pump that off, Jesus Christ. You can tell it's early in the morning, can't you? I'm just like, bleh. Anyway, and in addition to this, the game also starts using video recording, or some kind of screaming camera on a tripod. I don't know specifically what that was supposed to be, but it's able to capture spirits when they are sitting there and sort of vaguely gesturing and going, and, you know, if whether or not that's particularly good for most people, I don't know. I think a lot of people will probably play that bit and have it like, oh god, there's going to be a jump scare, and there is sort of, like, there's one pseudo jump scare where something legitimately creepy happens, but it's not necessarily like a, it's more of just like a whoa, 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 whoa. So it's interesting. It's a nice addition to a game which just had too much already taken out of it. If that had been included with all the other mechanics that Sylvio originally had, I'd have gone, awesome, we've got this extra stuff as well. Like if you could have had I don't know, instead of having the camera on a tripod, maybe following something with the camera, trying to keep it within range of the camera. That would have been really cool instead. But this works fine. It's just that overall, Sylvio has been let down tremendously by its lack of gameplay in respect to a previous game which actually did a huge amount considering where it had come from. The original Sylvio was a horror game on Unity, which makes most people run screaming for the fucking hills, done by a small team, and they produced something absolutely fantastic. And then second game come around, and I don't know what went into their heads, but it just made them pull all the interesting little curious and useful bits out of the game and left us with this still effectively atmospheric game. I've missed this entirely. I should probably talk about it just now. I also apologise, my reviews are terribly structured. I normally just have a quick scan of my notes and then I just read into the and just speak into the microphone. If I start reading from the notes, I go very dry, very monotone, and it just sounds shit. So you've got to deal with my rambling. But anyway, so the one thing that Sylvio does really well is the atmosphere, the actual tone, the actual setting, the actual use of sound and image design and everything like that still works really nicely. It's not a pretty game. It is never going to be a pretty game. We kind of established that in the first game where everything looked vague shades of low-res turd, but it was still using those elements effectively to make the game look unsettling and to sink the character into the game, sink the player into the game even. At the end of the day, the character of the game as well. But it was very good at using not a lot to achieve a lot, if that makes sense. I mean, with horror, less is always more. You don't just go ooga booga booga every 30 seconds, or you're making Resident Evil 6 and it becomes a joke very quickly. What most games really should do, and what good horror games do very effectively, is they just use little cues. They work out on how they're establishing certain things with the character, establish them with the player, and then just start tweaking them, start developing them. So like later on in the first Sylvio game, you started getting enemy cues as ambient music, which was a total dick move, but very effective. And in the second game, you've actually still got a lot of that in there. A lot of, I think they sample some of the old stuff as well. So I start kind of having these little reflexive, oh, hang on a second, I should be looking around for that. Wait, no, the ghosts aren't there anymore, but maybe they are. Maybe this is where it happens. And like small things like just getting the audio right inside the buildings, the voice work from Juliet is still absolutely spot on. This nice, not quite fully monotone, but kind of easy, soothing, fairly calm, sort of just tone to her voice, which I feel gave a nice bass line to the background weirdness of the game. I mean, it was good. I mean, and obviously, if you've seen me playing the game, you'll know I still got freaked out in quite a few places. It's just I didn't really engage with the game, and that's really the shame of it all, really. Sylvio 2 is a lovely attempt, but it just didn't learn from the things it had done previously. Stroboscope had made a really solid horror game, and in all actuality, they probably could have left it there. Like, that was a nice closed loop. Like, girl starts looking around an abandoned theme park, is interested in supernatural, gets too deep, gets stuck there. That could be it. Or if you wanted to make a sequel, maybe retread it and maybe have her either working her way out or having a friend of hers come in to try and find her. What we got instead was this very elaborate, roundabout opening up of a plot line that almost nobody was understanding. Or, I mean, if they telegraphed that in the first game, I haven't got a fucking clue, but I really doubt it was. This feels like a narrative twist that was come up with in the sequel, not something that was kind of from the point of origin. So I think that's probably where a lot of people are having this issue, is that if you've played the first game and then someone tells you, oh, by the way, the sequel ends with an alien abduction, people will go, what? So yeah, it's a game, it's a shame. I don't know who's to blame. I don't know why I'm rhyming. Alright, fuck off.